Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm going to give my experience and answer a very common question I had myself. For people at the boxing gym, which is like, how long does it take to get into the ring? So I managed to do it in 11 months. I think I'm just going to call the video a year, whatever, what's another month. But technically, it was more like 11 months from my first boxing lesson. So prior to doing a lesson, I did have a heavy bag in my basement, and I did watch a little YouTube instructional videos for maybe like 6 months prior to the first lessons. That would technically take me a bit over a year, but I'm also going to call it a year because for a long time I was only taking one lesson a week. So we're just going to go with a year from my first boxing lesson. So, um, so let's see here. How do I summarize this best? Some stats about me. I'm 40. So a 40-year-old, I've been into weightlifting and exercise overall for a lot of my life, but none of that was really cardio focused. It was mainly just weightlifting. So first boxing lesson was when I was at 40, age 40. I'm 41 right now, and I weighed like 195 pounds. A year later, I did my fight at 180. So anyways, first boxing lesson. So from November of 22 through April of 23, so for 5 months, I was in the beginner boxing class, and I was going basically just one time a week. So what the beginner boxing class is, the first 10 or 15 minutes is like calisthenics, warm up. Then we'll do some shadow boxing. A lot of times, especially in the beginner class, it's not just like free for all shadow boxing. It is like it's very specific combos. It's jab with a step, jab cross in place, jab cross with a step, jab cross going backward, jab cross going side to side. So it's shadow boxing, but it's also working on technique focused. So some of the class is like that. And then probably 10 or 15 minutes of the class would be like partner drills. Either we both have gloves on, and we're doing like coordinated combinations. Someone's going to throw a 1-2. The other person's going to catch the 1, slip the 2, so everyone knows what to expect. We do mitts with partners, and then, we may hit the bag. We didn't hit the bag a ton in the class. So that's probably like another, 20-minute chunk of that, and then 25-ish. I don't know. The math might not be adding up. Then at the end of the class, we'll typically do more calisthenic type stuff, sit-ups, burpees, jumping burpees, clapping push-ups, bear crawls, all sorts of stuff like that. So again, to repeat what the class is, maybe it's 10 minutes of calisthenics, 20 minutes shadow boxing, 20 minutes some type of partner drill, and then a final 10 where you are just doing more calisthenic type stuff. So I did that for one class a week for 5 months. When I wasn't taking the class, I was also hitting the bag in my basement, shadow boxing, and a big part of what I was also doing was trying to get cardiovascular capacity because I never did cardio, and I also would like social smoke and things like that. So definitely didn't come into it with like these pristine lungs. So if you are coming into boxing and you already have great cardio, you wouldn't have to be dedicating time that I did to just getting the lung capacity going. So for that first session from November 22 through April 23, one boxing class a week. And then I was still working out though, like 5 days a week. A day or two might be hitting the bag or just running, doing sprints, etc. Shadow boxing around the house just randomly. So pretty much that was what happened for that first 5 months period. Then starting basically in May of 23 through, what am I saying? Okay, this time frame, we're going to do May through August. So this 3-month stretch was when I got promoted up to the advanced class. And I was doing the advanced class 2 times a week pretty much from May through April. So the advanced class, similar to the beginner class, starts off with about 10 minutes of calisthenics. Then we will shadow box for a round or two to finish warming up. That is typically not guided. It's just everybody just does their own thing shadow boxing. Sometimes it is guided. Depends on the day. They mix it up a bit. Sometimes, you know, he'll show us 3 different combos, and then those may resurface later in the class when we're doing mitts or something. But again, then we'll say like 10 minutes cardio or 10 minutes calisthenic-y type warm up. 10 minutes, you know, again, burpees, jumping jacks, all that stuff. Then 10 minutes of some type of shadow boxing. Then we all go get our gear on. The gear, of course, is the mouth guard, headgear, groin protector. So then for probably, I just accounted for the first 20 minutes. So then for probably about 30 minutes, we have our gear on. And that is broken up pretty much into rounds. And most of them it's sparring rounds or drills. Sometimes so some of it, like a lot of times the first round is just I throw a double jab at someone, they throw a double jab at me. So we're not attacking at the same time. It's not like a live match. They know I'm going to throw 2 jabs at them. They throw 2 jabs back at me. Sometimes we'll switch it up. It's a jab cross. Sometimes it's a jab hook, whatever. But that's a lot of the times the very first 3-minute round. I think they're 3, maybe they're 2. And then we'll switch it up. So we might do lead hand is free so that any punch with your lead hand counts, but you cannot do anything with your rear hand except for block. We might do rounds that are straights only. We might do rounds that are body shots only. Sometimes we'll do a jab free, body free. So you can jab the head, but you cannot do any other punch to the head. Body, any punch goes. So sometimes we'll do rounds like that. And then occasionally in the class, we do also do just every punch goes. It's basically sparring for a round. Within that, the coach will yell switch mid-round, after a round. So if we do, I don't know, call it like 7 or maybe 8 rounds, you're going to get maybe not 7 or 8 different sparring partners or drill partners, but you're going to at least get like 5 different people. So that's what eats up the most of the advanced class is full contact, but there's like restrictions on the drilling or the sparring a lot of times. And then the last 10 minutes back to burnout of some intense calisthenics. Occasionally the coach does mix bag work into it as well, mitt work sometimes as well for sure. But and it depends on how quick a fight's coming up. If he's got like a bunch of fighters fighting the next week, then he's going to make the class a little different than if the next fight isn't for like a month, So we may work mitts, we may work a bag. We're definitely getting our full gear on for 20 to 30 minutes, and it's going to be full contact and all of that. So that's pretty much the advanced class. I was doing that twice a week, May through August. On top of that, I was doing, my cardio and shadow boxing at home. I'd like hit the bags at home for a day, things like that. So then I think it was, so then we'll just say, that was May through August. Then, so when September came around, I had, finally gotten like some level of comfort in the advanced class. At first, the advanced class, I'm getting smoked, of course, like I just moved up from the beginner class and now I'm in there with all the dudes that have done a bunch of fights and everything. And so at first, it took a while to even feel like I belonged in the advanced class. But then after 3 months of that, I was getting good enough where they would let me spar. So from September till my fight, which was October 28th, so now we're going into like a final 2-month stretch leading up to this fight, basically. I was going to the advanced class 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Wednesday after the class, after an hour-long class, we would spar. And then also on Sundays, sometimes I would go in and spar or do the beginner class. So that was like the 2 months, the final 2-month segment I'm breaking this up into. I was at the boxing gym 3 days a week minimum, sometimes 4 days a week, and then still try to get in, work on the bag, and still do running and cardio, sprinting, and all that kind of stuff as well. So I also have a note here. Okay, so September 17th was my first sparring. I kept a little sparring log, by the way. So my very first time doing like full sparring that wasn't part of the class was only 6 weeks before my fight. So I'm just throwing out these little like, facts at you guys that are probably, if you're watching this, you probably just joined a gym and you're wondering when you're going to maybe be able to fight. So from my first sparring match to my first fight was only 6 weeks apart. But keep in mind, there were definitely weeks in there I sparred twice a week. I also have a note that I did 40 total rounds of sparring before the fight. So some days, maybe after class, I only got 3 in or 4 in because there's a bunch of dudes trying to get sparring in. And so, the coach is shuffling you in and out more often. And then maybe some days less people showed up for sparring. So you could get 8 rounds in. But I only had done 40 total rounds before I got in the ring and fought. So let's see here. Yep. Okay. So then that was, and I did 7 total sessions. Okay. So I did 7 total sparring sessions that came out to 40 rounds. And then the other thing worth noting here is, one of those sparring sessions was pretty much a fight. And the reason I say that is because it was dudes from other gyms that came in to spar. So most of the sparring is with guys that you are in the class with, you're basically friends with them. You guys work out together all the time. You're doing full contact class work. So you know them and you're friends, and it's like the vibes are a little bit different. But one of the sparring sessions, our coach brought in other gyms to do sparring, and that was like a straight out fight, man, because then there's everyone from their gym rooting for them, everyone from your gym's rooting for you. You don't know each other. So that was actually just like a fight. And I did 4 rounds of that, 3 with one, or no, I did 5 rounds of that. 4 with one dude and then 1 with a different guy. So within those 40 rounds, 5 of them were basically fight intensity. Okay, so I'm laying out some pretty good info here, hitting on some key points. Okay, so I actually took the fight 10 days before the fight is when I was offered to participate in it. So, but I had also happened to start like a 2-week extreme diet beforehand. So the reason I was doing this is I didn't know if my fight would end up being an exhibition fight or a official fight. And if it was going to be an official fight, I wanted to do it at there's a cap at either 176 or 178. I forgot what it was, but I wanted to get down to that if it was going to be an official fight. So again, like way back when I started this, I was a $195. By the time I started this 2-week cut down to like, 178-ish or so, which I didn't even end up needing to get to because it was an exhibition. I fought at like exactly 180. But I probably started that more extreme cut at like 186. So just the beginner class, the advanced class, the cardio work got me from like 195 to 186. And then I went on a really extreme diet pretty much. And by extreme, I don't necessarily mean like the calories were super low. The calories were 2,000. But it was extreme in the sense that I was weighing everything to the gram and I was eating the exact same food every single day for 2 weeks. So that's what basically made it extreme to me. And that shredded off like, 5-6 pounds really easy. So when I went into the ring, it was like a $180. And like mostly muscle, realistically, it was probably still like 12 or 13% body fat. But at least visually, I did look pretty lean, probably the shreddest I've ever been in my life, honestly. So I was kicking that into gear because I didn't want to have to fight a bigger dude because I had a bunch of fat on me, right? That doesn't make sense. So went on the diet, lost 5 pounds, and let's see, I kicked my cardio up a lot going into that fight. I was doing a lot more sprints than I was just like steady state. So I would hop on the treadmill and I would do a minute at 10 to 11 miles an hour, and then I would drop it down to like 3.5 miles an hour for a minute. So like a minute of sprinting, a minute of more or less walking, and I would do that for like 30 minutes or 3 miles or whatever, but I did it like a lot, and so that helped. The other thing I did in particular, because it was an issue for me, is sometimes I would bring my mouth guard into the gym and I would sprint with my mouth guard in, and I would do my best not to open my mouth and just breathe all through my nose while sprinting. Reason I was doing that is because I ate some really hard hooks with my mouth not totally shut, and that sucks. So I was like trying to force myself to be super out of breath and still not open up my mouth, just breathe through the nose. What else do I have here? Let's see. Yeah, so that's honestly, that's about it. I mean, that gets you from a high level of my first class in November of 22 to my first fight on October 28th of 2023. So 11 months total, a little bit of bag work in my basement beforehand, but no actual boxing instructor, no actual boxing lessons prior to November of 22. First sparring session was only 6 weeks before my fight. Sparred 40 total rounds before my fight, 5 of them being super hard, like basically a fight with dudes from another gym. And again, I'm only counting the rounds that were like sparring. If I started to count like the rounds in the class, then I would be well into the hundreds, you know. But those are a little less intense. You know, we're in the class, we're not in the ring. I mean, you still don't get popped. I mean, I had bloody noses and black eyes from doing the class. So it's not like the class is like, you know, everyone's in there just love tapping each other, but it's still not, you know, the intensity of sparring people you know, and then it's definitely not the intensity of sparring people that you don't know. So I'm not counting any of those in those 40 rounds of sparring. That's like legit just me and another dude in there banging away in the ring. So that was about it, man. So yeah, I mean, and again, for 5 months, I only went to the boxing class 1 time a week. And then I kicked it up, you know, to multiple, like 3 to 4 times a week after that. So it wasn't super hard in terms of like the time needed to get in the ring, but it's definitely, you got to be dedicated, you know. I mean, like one thing I totally gave up was weightlifting. I used to be big into like weightlifting, deadlifts, squats, bench, overhead press, that kind of like power lifting sort of vibes for the most part, compound movements and stuff. I didn't touch a weight that whole time. You know, and really your muscles, like your biceps or something like that, ain't gonna do you a whole lot of good in a fight anyway. It kind of just slows you down, whatever. So I focus my non-boxing work on improving my cardio. I try to do a lot of shadow boxing. Like even if it wasn't a workout, if I was just hanging out watching TV, maybe I would jump up and shadow box a couple rounds or something. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't like crazy. I mean, you know, to go from never boxing at all in your life, never taking a boxing lesson. I mean, I fought in the streets, you know, but it's not the same thing. So yeah, 11 months was all it really took me. And then I did a good fight. I mean, it was certainly respectable. The footage is up there. I mean, I'm sure it's sloppy and I was making mistakes and all that kind of fun stuff too. But, you know, it was like I was competent enough to get in there, you know, and the coach isn't just going to throw you in, at least my coach, unless you've like kind of proven yourself. You know, he wanted to see me do more sparring. He told me that, like, because I was like asking him, you know, what do I got to do or whatever? What's the criteria for you to let me fight? And so, yeah, it was more sparring, this and that. And then I think he probably was testing, you know, not just me, but the whole gym, right? When he brings in other gyms to spar and it's like, okay, you didn't punk out then, things got intense, you know, you held your own, you did good, whatever. So that was probably like another level for him to check the box to say, okay, I think I can march this dude out there and go fight and not embarrass the gym or embarrass himself or whatever. So hopefully that helps someone. I'm sure it takes, I feel like you could do it in less than 11 months, honestly. Like if I was going to the gym from the boxing gym from the very first time I signed up, if I was going 3 times a week, I mean, I could have probably done it in like 6 months or 7 months, you know? So 11 months, a year is totally realistic, even if you can't dedicate a ton of time to it. You know, I work a lot. I got a demanding job. I've got other responsibilities, obviously, that are not boxing. So yeah, if you're like, you're a working man or whatever, you can still definitely go take your first boxing lesson and get in that ring a year later. Could be, you know, more, could be less, but that was my little story about how I made it happen. And this is a very common question, man. I get it all the time once other people know I did a fight, they ask me, you know, how long did it take, blah, blah, blah. And then I was asking the same question before I did one to other dudes I knew at the gym that did fight. So that's my story. All right, y'all, have a good one.